because they would have to be able to manage websites, write in the language of the web in English, product descriptions, stuff like that. Absolutely. Great suggestion or comment. What else? You're the business expert. What else?
E-banking.
E-banking, okay, so again, being really intimately familiar with the online platforms that are out there for banking, for trade, for communication, for product development, logo development, marketing, etc. These are the things to think about. So,
what about be ready to present something in a foreign language? I mean, in the global language.
yeah. Okay, absolutely. So making sure that the students, by the time they graduate from the business program, that they have a solid grasp of business English, some of the terminology and vocabulary that is predominant in that. Absolutely. So also we have matching course content to the target group. And this is basically thinking, do you have bankers? What kind of business people do you have? And then matching your content to suit the needs of that group. So I look at that also as you have the overarching needs in business, which, the vocabulary, the letter of referral or recommendation, stuff like that. But then you have content specific. If you're going into logo design for business, that's content specific English that you would need to work on. And creating materials for business English is something that we have to think about, because when we look at all these needs, in every country, the needs are slightly different. Because most businesses want to be international, so you do have to train the international aspect. But what about, for example, the Ukrainian aspect? It's not necessarily, you don't sell here the way you would sell to an American. So looking at the content that you have for business English, a lot of the time it's very much Eurocentric. So either from the US, the UK, or we even have some from Australia. So how does that fit into Ukrainian context, but also in English? Because in Ukraine we have many different people from many different countries trying to do business here and understanding the culture here. So the students would have to navigate that not only through English, the language, but also culturally. And we have to create materials to help them, to help train the students who are going to go into that environment, help them be able to better communicate with the other groups of people they're working with. And then we also have, of course, within curriculum design, writing the basic syllabus. And I think most of you are familiar with the syllabus. Okay, so these are some of the aspects that students will need English for. Some of them we've already talked on, but we have communication, so that focuses on the 4 skills. They need to be able to write, they need to be able to read, they need to be able to speak, and they definitely need to be able to listen. And listening is really complicated in business because you have to listen to what was directly said and indirectly said, which goes right on into culture. Because part of listening has to do with culture. How do you pick up the nuances of what was indirectly stated? It's hard. And also knowledge of and sensitivity to others. So being aware of how you ask a question can have an impact in the business negotiation succeeding or failing. Something that's small. Connections. So with business, it's so broad. You always have links to other fields, right? For example, there's a business around my favorite sport, scuba diving. There's scuba equipment, there's scuba schools, there's a lot of business attached to the scuba industry. And so thinking of other connections when you're going into design the business course, what are the connections you want to consider? What are your students going to go into business for? And if you have a wide variety of students going into a wide variety of different businesses, that would be the perfect time to use projects, right? Because then you can put them together, the ones that will be in the same business field, and have them continue to study more in depth what they will be doing in the future, and gaining the knowledge, the background knowledge that they'll need within that field, the vocabulary they'll need within that field, while also maintaining the core curriculum of your specific business class. Does that make sense? Okay. And then community. So how are you going to connect whatever you're doing in class outside of class? And this is something that we do a lot in the U.S., right? Whenever we have classes, especially business and universities and colleges, we have internships that students sign up for, and they go and they can like shadow, that's the word. I was thinking ghost, and I'm like, it's not ghost. But they shadow a professional in the field for a series. It could be a day, it could be a week, it could be a month, and they just follow that professional around. And sometimes they can help them with small tasks and get to know what it's like to be in their field. And or the internship itself would be having the student go and work in a business environment at a business setting and get course credit for it. Generally speaking, internships are non-paid, or they're like very, very minimally paid. For example, sorry, my voice is going. For example, you may have taxi money, or like bus fare, or metro fare, or something like that, that's covered by the stipend of the internship, but that's it. So they're not actually taking a salary, but they get a small stipend to help them commute to the location where the business is. Okay, so those are the project work. It is argued, and you can see that this is the link. There's a really nice article about the 4 C's, if you will, of what we need in the English classroom. And this is from, I forgot, it's the Japanese TESOL organization. It's called JALT. I don't remember the exact acronym, but Mackenzie, I believe it's Alan Mackenzie wrote this, and it's a very nice article about how and why we need to consider these 4 C's in our business. Well, in our curriculums in general. You can see this isn't only about business, but in English curriculum. Full stop. Okay, so in terms of the 4 skills for listening and speaking, these are some of the things we very much have to take into consideration. So we have the sales meetings. So leading and participating, what does this mean? What does it mean to sit in a business meeting and run the business meeting? What does it mean to be a participant in the business meeting? How much of that is dependent on the culture of the business? For example, if you go to Google and you're working in Google on their business team, you're going to have a very different experience than if you go to, say, Kyivstar and go to one of their business meetings. I can guarantee it's going to be a very different experience. So how do you prepare the students in terms of their listening and speaking to actively participate in these sorts of environments? Hiring and letting staff go, also very difficult. Marketing campaign. So my favorite, and I'm sure that Natasha, you have plenty of these, but my favorite one was originally, I have to make sure I get this right, so I'm going to look at this, but originally in China, when Kentucky Fried Chicken entered their market, in Kentucky Fried Chicken, the slogan is finger licking good, meaning it's so good you want every last bit from your fingers. But when they translated it into Chinese, it said, eat your fingers off. instead of finger licking good. So you can imagine that nobody wanted to go to KFC. And there are a lot of parts like that where sorry. Coca-Cola was also really funny. Their slogan was "Bite the wax tadpole." And then they changed it to "Happiness in the mouth," which sounds a lot more appealing than "Bite the wax tadpole." So I love marketing slogans because they're really, really funny when they're wrong. And they make for really great examples in class. Okay, let me just okay, so that's what I wanted to say about marketing campaigns. Also, we have office meetings, we have interviews. The way that you are in interviews in the United States is very different than Great Britain, is very different than Australia. There's a lot of cultural components that need to be considered. And it would be the same thing that you would want to teach in a business curriculum. Making presentations. How do you give presentations? It's been really interesting because it wasn't last week. Several weeks ago, I did a Pechakucha presentation. And the Pechakucha presentation was started for architects in Japan. And not everybody could accept the Pechakucha presentation because it was so different from the presentation style that we're used to. So I think it's really important, especially in a business context, to be able and willing to be flexible and adaptable about your presentation skills and what works in what culture and to whom. So also telephone conversations with clients. You can imagine that's very difficult, especially since you don't have the face-to-face. You can't mime, unless you're on Skype, of course. Reading and writing. So we have to consider email. This is really important. A lot of the students that I have, even the ones that left the school and were still writing me, and these are people who are going into the business world, because when I was working in Macau, we had a lot of people going into business or finance, because it's a huge center of finance. And they would sign off the emails, or they would begin the emails with "Dearest Eve," and they would sign off the emails with with all my love, with my, all these extraordinarily inappropriate ways to sign off a business email. And so making sure that students really know how to write properly so that they're not offending accidentally the person that they're sending the email to. Proposals are another important thing, understanding your audience. I see a lot of proposals for Fulbright ETAs or for Fulbright applicants. Also in terms of, I've seen several proposals for projects that people wish to develop in the future. And what strikes me about this is a lot of the times students and or professionals, they don't actually read the information on the website of the people that they're trying to give the proposal to. They don't know how to underline the main objectives and the main idea and fit the proposals into the mission statement of the organization. These are not what they're taught to do, but they're crucially important to whether or not your proposal is accepted. Making sure that you sound like you could represent the company in the way that they would like to be seen. Grants, same thing. Claim adjustment letters, sales letters, inquiries. These are all components of reading and writing. Responding to inquiries and requests for information. This is difficult because oftentimes it comes off as bossy or really like, gimme, gimme, gimme. And that's not what the person intended to write. Account terms and conditions, business report, and a business memo. So these are not the entirety of what you would be doing for business English, but they are a lot of what we do commonly work on with students for business English.